afternoon. Aha! You would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save yourself and come down from that cross. Mark chapter 15, verse 29 through 30. The words of those who passed by cut deeper every time. Crowds had once hung on his every word, but now these onlookers had turned on him in the most vicious way. The chief priest and scribe pointed out the utter folly of this Son of God. He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from that cross, that we may see and believe. Mark chapter 15, verse 31 through 32. And then, as if it couldn't get any worse, one of the criminals crucified on either side joined in the fun, mocking him as well. Now here Jesus hung, suspended between heaven and earth, utterly alone. His followers had fled into the darkness the night before, and except for his mother, the two Marys, and John, all his people seemed to have turned against him. He turned his eyes where he was certain to find some respite. Intensely he looked into the heavens, searching for a sign of deliverance from his God. But even the midday sky closed itself to him. The clouds were thick, and the sun was nowhere to be found. All he saw was black nothingness. Desperately, Jesus gazed into the abyss and cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" His cry echoed into the darkness, unreturned. How could his God leave him like this? How could he trust in a God who would abandon him in his greatest time of need? On January the 12th, 2010, O'Donnell, a mother of 6, was preparing rice and beans for her family's dinner. One of her children was playing outside while the rest were inside their ground floor apartment doing homework and playing. One moment it was a day like every other day, and the next moment the world itself shook with great convulsions, bringing the 6-story building crashing down upon them in a few moments of chaos. Stunned and confused, O'Donnell was incredibly able to compose herself and dig herself free, but she feared the fate of her 5 children who had been inside with her. I was screaming out for the children as I threw pieces of concrete off me, but heard nothing. I could see layers of concrete lying on the spot where they had been doing homework. I was sure they were dead. The silence O'Donnell faced was deafening. She could never move that kind of concrete rubble by herself, and with everyone else scrambling for their own survival, this mother faced the harsh reality that her children were dead, or very soon would be. In a matter of moments, 5 of her precious children were violently snatched from her motherly embrace. The 7.0 magnitude earthquake that struck 16 miles west of Haiti's capital city and killed an estimated 230,000 people has once again left our world staring into the abyss. The reality is that this world is a dark, dark place. When we aren't entertaining and distracting ourselves into a drunken stupor, we are pressed by the brutality of the world on so many different sides. From everyday struggles and frustrations to wars, to terrorist attacks, to natural disasters, to broken families, to lost jobs, to tragic car accidents, to long battles against disease. In these moments, we come face to face with our utter helplessness. We cry out for help to anyone looking for answers, and we especially pray to God time after time. But what do our cries get? Often the same thing that Jesus got: silence. How many Christians have prayed to be delivered from the clutches of cancer or another terrible illness to no avail? Sure, 1 or 2 make it against the odds, but what about the rest? How often do people cry out to God over failed relationships or the death of a loved one? How often do parents mourn the loss of a child and beg for answers from God? Or the classmates of the one taken too soon who long for some sort of understanding and beg for God to explain? How many people cry out from the depths of poverty, the horror of war, the unthinkable and the unimaginable? Did he ignore the cries of the 230,000 people who were killed in Haiti's earthquake? Is God dead? As the dark clouds swirled over the head of Jesus, he faced his greatest trial. Everything he stood for hung in the balance. In a matter of hours, he would be dead. And already he had been shamed, humiliated, and discredited. Everyone around Jesus had reason to abandon faith because the pressure of despair was immense. What good was it for him to patiently wait any longer? What could he possibly be waiting for as death reached out to embrace him? How could this be the arrival of God's kingdom that he had so forcefully preached? How could he be the Messiah and long-awaited King of Israel? Had he been mistaken? Now was the time to own up to that. Now was the time to give up. No one could fault him for it. But stubbornly, defiantly, Jesus pressed onward. He did the unthinkable. He resolved himself to patiently wait on his Father in heaven. He refused to give up his hope that God's kingdom was at hand. He did not fight to bring himself down from that cross. He did not call on an army of angels to intervene. He did not curse God. Foolishly, some mocker would say, Jesus threw himself into the hands of his God. Foolishly, a scoffer would ridicule, Jesus continued to bless and love those who stood against him. Following the way of love, he persisted till the end and refused to back down. He would not be deterred. He threw himself headlong into the destructive path of death itself and to the despair of those who stayed and watched. Death did not yield. It pushed forward, unwaveringly, crushing this Jesus under its feet. Under 6 stories of broken buildings, 7-year-old Kiki, his 10-year-old sister Sabrina, and their little brother were buried alive, tucked away in a small pocket in the concrete rubble with the corpses of their other 2 siblings. These 3 had amazingly been spared from a crushing death, but now they were trapped, alone, hungry, thirsty, and weak. The days passed, and there was no sign that rescue would come. They heard no one calling out for them or digging to set them free. Kiki and Sabrina's little brother cried out to them, begging for water. Powerlessly, they were unable to satisfy his need. He asked for water on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday, but they had no water. They were helpless to save him. Fatigued and dehydrated, he died of thirst in their arms. Surrounded by the decaying bodies of their brothers and sisters, Kiki and Sabrina clung to each other and waited. Though it would have been easy to simply surrender in despair, slipping into the death with their brothers and sisters, they continued to hope, beyond all hope, that they would be rescued. They found their solace in one another, strengthened by the fact that they were not alone. In this world, death also stands on your doorstep. Diseases, disaster of every sort, wars and violence rage all around, threatening to tear your life apart. Will you continue to look to God in hope, or will you walk away in despair? Alone, you will eventually fall into despair, but with others there is a chance for hope. Like Kiki and Sabrina, it is important that you and I face the harshness of the reality in the company of one another. If you and I try to go it alone, then more likely than not, we will not make it. We are simply not strong enough. God has given us a community of brothers and sisters that we might build each other up and strengthen ourselves in the face of the world's darkness. Peter's first letter was written to Christians facing persecution, people tempted to give up on God. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6 through 9 says, Now for a little time you may have to suffer great in all kinds of trials. These come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine. Now he wrote these words to Christian communities, not to individuals. He wrote about facing despair as part of a community in Christ. Without community gathered around the cross, the task ahead of us would be too much. When you and I stare death and despair in the face, refusing to buckle, we need each other. The hymn writer put it this way: when all things seem against us, to drive us to despair, we know one gate is open, one ear will hear our prayer. On Friday, they laid Jesus' body in the tomb. He had stared into the abyss, and it swallowed him up. It looked like the kingdom he preached never came, and now he was just another dead Messiah, a failure. Scoffers said his trust in a God who would let him face rejection and suffering and crucifixion was a joke. How, they ridiculed, could he have thought that such a God was real? His God had been too late. His trust had been in vain. In a world where the strong conquer, he had been weak. In a world where wisdom ruled, he had been a fool. In a world where death had the final say, he was dead. This dark and unforgiving world once again asserted its strength. But as it pressed down relentlessly on this weak and seemingly foolish Jesus, its iron grip began to slip. On Sunday morning, the way of the world was shown to be a fraud. The world that everyone thought they knew was completely turned on its head. Jesus, this crucified failure, was bodily raised to life. His foolishness was proved to be true wisdom, his weakness true strength. Everything the world thought it had figured out began to crumble in a pile of rubble. A week after the disaster, Kiki and Sabrina's aunt, Devinal, refused to return to the family's apartment to look for some belongings. As she looked through the rubble, she heard what she thought were muffled cries. Immediately, she started to dig with a crowbar. Amazingly, a team of 20 American rescue workers from New York and Virginia stumbled onto the scene and moved in to help. They began to dig, and 4 hours of digging and cutting through 5 layers of crushed concrete, they came upon Kiki, huddled next to the corpse of one of his siblings. They were able to pull him free. Then they released Sabrina, who was trapped behind a metal chair. After 8 grueling days without food or water, the 2 children were reunited with their mother amidst tears and laughter. Their foolish hope was answered, and a small window into another world was revealed. In the story of Kiki and Sabrina, and in countless others throughout the world, we are given small reminders that our natural understanding of what is good or evil, right or wrong, wise or foolish, strong or weak, has been turned upside down in Jesus Christ the crucified. The insignificant and humble ways of faith, hope, and love are shown in him to be God's way. The dark world around us continues to mock their foolish hope, but our assurance is that the outcome of faith in Jesus as God, is nothing short of true rescue on the other side of death. As 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 8 states, though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. Though you do not see God, you know you will be saved from the evil clutches of a world of disease, disaster, war, and broken relationships. Cling to God in all things, and you will be raised from the dead, just like Jesus. As you lie on your deathbed, and even in the days between now and then, you can be certain that your God, the God of Jesus, acts on the other side of death, on the other side of the abyss. The eyes of faith given by the Spirit of Jesus reveal to us that the true God of this world is found in the midst of the fearful abyss. Our God resides in the crucified Jesus. You would be a fool to believe in a God like that. A God you cannot see. A God on the other side of death. Yeah, you would be a fool just like Jesus. You believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. For you are receiving the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Amen. All right. So what'd you like? What'd you not like? What do you want to keep? What do you want to get rid of?
Well, like you said, it was so tearjerker, right? And Yeah, very hard, but very profound. Made you think.
What did it make you think?
Just how fragile, life can be, and how it can change, and so quickly, and how and just remind you that after all that is said and done, and everything like that, we do have something. Hopefully, we do have something waiting for us, and a reward, so to speak, or But I say a reward. People
reward for our faith.
That's saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, why does God allow these things to happen? Why do we have to go through these natural disasters and non-natural disasters and the death of a child? And
I think there could be many reasons. I mean, it could be that subtle. They're not so subtle, but reminders that how fragile life is and everything, and it also what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
And we brought this on ourselves.
If everything was so hunky dory and perfect all the time, then, like you say, we wouldn't appreciate.
What about the one who died? They're not going to learn that death, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. They died.
Well,
so what about that person?
Well, we can't all have peaceful deaths either. I mean, we can't all die in our sleep.
Why not?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know why not. I mean, for some reason, God chooses then when to take us, and
there's reasons we don't know a lot of things, right? Even when Jesus Christ was on the cross, what did he see? He died alone on the cross. Basically, he thought it was so it seemed, right?
He was already asking, he himself asked at the end, how could you have forsaken me?
Because he's looking up and he sees nothing. Where is God to help him? He's this unimaginable pain that he's supposed to be going through at this point, right? What were you going to say? Something we brought it on ourselves?
Yeah, for the whole why do we die, and because I forgot the exact question that you had asked and how you worded it.
So why does God allow this to
and
happen?
we brought death, and we brought torment and despair, and we brought everything. We're the ones that brought evil into the world. God didn't do it.
Right. God gave us paradise. God gave us paradise, and we found that one little tree that we couldn't touch, and we couldn't say no. How often do we do that?
I think it's just a test of your faith or whatever.
What is?
It's when bad things or really bad things happen, because there's so much stuff that can just kill us. It
can happen like that
every day. We're literally surrounded by death.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you're able to survive something like a natural disaster, like something like that. That's super. That's the most likely thing that's going to kill you.
The fact that we're alive to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing fact. I mean, I watch all those space shows about how the Earth was formed and everything, and how every single little thing had to fall into place for us to be here. And here we are, thriving. And 1 million people die every day in this world. 1 million people die every day. Every day. A little over 1 million are born every day. Think about that. Think about that number. 1 million people.
That's average. That doesn't include...
Right, that's average.
I have no idea if that...
Think about that. I mean, it makes you want to be a funeral director, doesn't it? Heck, you got job security for sure. But...
As long as someone else can deal with the bodies.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, that's part of the job.
I know.
So why... What did we talk about in the sermon today about how we get through these times? How we get through these trials or these tough times in our life when we see that there's just, we're hopeless, What do we do? What does this sermon tell us today that we need to do to make sure that we make it through? What did those two girls do that were under that rubble for 8 days?
I think it was about 8 days.
Yeah.
Have faith.
Have faith, that's one thing.
They hope for
Hold on to each other.
Very good, Tim. Hold on to each other. It's about community. We're talking about community here, which is, our
sermon
series this year is, well, of course it's not on there again. Here it is. It's life together, our life together as a community. I mean, it's important that we understand that we're not in this alone. First of all, you've got That's why we have churches. That's why we have gatherings like this, so we can grow together and have our strength be put into one. Combine our strength, combine our knowledge, combine our faith, and it makes it that much stronger. And, I learned something. I tell y'all this all the time. I learn something every Sunday that I'm here about you, about the Bible, about my faith, about God. Every Sunday I learn something new, and I think that's amazing. That if y'all weren't here, I may not have that. So that's huge to me. I've been studying for a long time to do what I do, and continue to study today to do what I do. Working on that doctorate for my biblical studies. If I can ever finish that test. Well, it's a doozy. It's just, But it should be. But anyway. So, community.
Well, your sermon, it says he wrote about facing despair as part of the community in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Is what Peter.
Well, think about that. It's pretty common sense, isn't it? When somebody's feeling down, somebody's getting the dumps or whatever, it's hard for them to pull themselves out by themselves. Sometimes you can, but it helps to have a friend to kind of either help pick you up or either kick you in the ass, one or the other.
Science and psychology has even come around to that same principle of proving that we have to have someone else and one another to help each other.
Well, get this. There's, for years, this is an old study, a psychological study that was done that I learned back in school. It was, babies. There were babies that were preemies, and they were placed in incubators and with very little human contact.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that those children grew to either they died early, or when they grew up, they were socially unskilled. They had problems. They had disorders, and it's found that's why they have volunteers that come in with the preemies and whatnot, and they come in and hold them. Volunteers will come in.
Scott's father does that.
Scott's father does that, and they come in and just hold the babies. That human contact is necessary. It's not a choice. It's necessary for that child's development, and we've discovered that many years ago, and it's proven invaluable, I'm sure, to many lives. Because that's, can you imagine? Just because somebody didn't touch you,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have contact with another person, that you have all these problems, or you die. Your body just says, well, obviously, there's nobody here for me, so, it's probably a natural thing that God has placed into him, but amazing the way the body works and the way God has created us with so many different little things that we are learning about every day. My God, why have you forsaken me? That weakness?
It's
What was
human.
that? What is he doing? He's been so strong all this time, preaching about he's the Messiah, and God will save everybody. This is the coming of the kingdom of God, and
He's being human.
God was with him the whole entire time that Jesus was doing his ministry and preaching to the Galileans and the Samaritans and everybody. But in the beginning of time, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree, sin separated them from God. So when Jesus died on the cross and he took the sin of the world on him, then he could no longer be in one with God.
maybe that's one way to look at it. I've never heard of it that way, but that's an interesting way to look at
It's
it.
very interesting.
Here's the deal: God never left Jesus. God was there. God didn't say anything. God never leaves us, ever. God is always at your side. But sometimes he doesn't say anything. And sometimes that's his, obviously that's his choice, but obviously there's a reason for that. Jesus Christ was fulfilling a prophecy. I believe, God was probably weeping. He was probably hurting. This is his son that he's having to watch be killed.
He said the clouds, the sky had become cloudy at that point.
They did become cloudy, and the darkness came, and then of course when Jesus died, the earthquake and the fabric, the curtain at the temple ripped in two.
I always thought it was because, because God was actually, he was like, why have you forsaken me? And no one answered because God was on the cross.
Interesting also,
got part of God was on the cross. Understanding that Holy Trinity can be kind of tough for us.
Yeah.
Three in one. You've got the Holy Spirit, you've got Jesus Christ, and you've got God, but they're all one God.
Yeah, since he's one, he's like, well,
You're
you're on
right.
the cross,
We crucified not only Jesus Christ, we crucified God. Absolutely, we did. They were all up there at one point or another, and they were all in it with him.
Yeah.
Very, very, very possible. That's an interesting way to look at it also. God couldn't answer because God was there with him.
Yeah, he's like, God,
I
where
like
are
that.
you? He's like,
I actually like that. That's actually
Yeah.
pretty good. Again, showing how the Bible can be translated in so many different ways and so many, thought from. Does it matter?
no.
It matters why God didn't answer. It matters that He didn't answer, but it doesn't matter really whether what reason that we came up with here was. The idea is that everybody left Jesus. They all turned their back on Him, just like we do every day of our lives. We turn our back on Jesus Christ.
Well, everyone but that one thief next to him.
But that thief was repenting.
Mm-hmm.
That thief was a lucky SOB. He did it at the right time,
Yeah.
right? And then He said, today you will be in the kingdom, in paradise with me. Comforting
Especially
him.
since he's probably like a hardened criminal.
Well, he was obviously. I mean, he had been accused, tried, and was. He even said it. He said, he was telling the other criminal, how do you talk to him that way? Don't you? He didn't do anything wrong. We're the ones who are criminals. He admitted it. We're criminals. We're doing our time. We're doing our sentence. We're getting our just rewards. He didn't deserve this.
Yeah.
He didn't. But you know what? He committed treason. Jesus Christ did. That Friday, we talk about, usually, this is a little different this year because normally we're not really talking about this too much until the actual Holy Week. And since we're doing this series of sermons, it kind of brings it into a little bit earlier so we can have more time to talk about it, and I like that. Because the Good Friday service is bleak.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be thought-provoking. It's meant to be painful. It's meant to make you go introspective on yourself. But now we can kind of talk about that day. And it talks about how, Jesus was shuffled here and there and everywhere, and really nobody wanted to do it. They just wanted to kind of use him as a sideshow more than anything. That even the Herod and Pilate just wanted to see what he would do, see these miracles. Well, God doesn't perform miracles on request. This isn't this isn't a call in, this is a KVIL or whatever it used to be with Delilah,
It's not pinch letters.
But Jesus basically, he admitted nothing really. He just said, they asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Are you the Son of God? Are you the Messiah?
If you say so.
Yeah, that's what you say. That's what you say.
Mm-hmm.
But the people persisted. They were
They're unrelenting.
right. Why were the people so unrelenting? What did they hate about him so much? Change?
That he refused to admit what he was saying.
Maybe.
That he refused to
He
show.
refused to admit it.
I mean, he refused to show that he was the Messiah.
Right. He's not going to do that.
While they were
He
sitting
already
there.
showed that.
Yeah. And then that's a normal human instinct to want to. Well, I know I'm right. I know I'm right.
Imagine today somebody walking around the United States saying, "You don't have to pay your taxes." I'm telling you, you don't have to pay your taxes. They can't do anything to you. I'm telling you, you don't have to pay your taxes, and it's not against the law, and their law is wrong. Well, what's going to happen to that person?
Well,
they're
die in a
gonna-
car accident.
They're going to be derided as crazy.
Or they're going to be arrested, or to say that, the president isn't really the president.
You're gonna die in a DWI accident.
God is the president. I'm the president. I'm the one who's coming down. It's going to be my kingdom now.
Mm-hmm.
So President Trump, Emperor Trump, would have to no longer be emperor. Well, that doesn't go too well with emperors, especially. They kind of have that born right that they're I'm the emperor. And how dare you?
He'd get on Twitter quickly.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Trump would get on Twitter quickly.
Emperor or dictator or whatever.
Right, whatever it is.
Whatever term you want
Whatever
to
it is, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
But that day they made just kind of shuffled him around, and we kind of skirted around it today. But
Well, we learned a couple lessons with that one, where he was taken to Pilate and the other person. What was the other name?
It's Herod.
Herod and Pilate So that was we learned about Herod and Pilate a little bit.
Yeah, they were enemies.
And then the fact that he was shoved. I'm sure that was not an easy distance to travel.
Well, it was across the city. He was in the city. See, you understand. This is something we'll learn on Palm Sunday. Jesus comes into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday amongst all the fanfare, and he's riding a donkey, very almost peasant-like, but very humble, with the palms from the palm trees. So they were there. That's what they have in Jerusalem. They're waving the palm trees at him, the palm leaves at him. And just oh, the son of David, the Messiah. On the other end of town, there's another parade happening, and that's Pontius Pilate. Pilate
and the Romans.
And the Romans, because this is Passover weekend. Okay, and they know that the Romans rule over Judea, over Jerusalem. That's their city, but it's still a predominantly Jewish city. Okay, so they know that at this time of Passover is common for the Jews to revolt. It's common for uprisings to happen. So they always want to show a sign of force, a sign of presence during this time. So at the same time, Jesus is coming in very humbly on the back of a mule. Here's the Roman army, with fanfare and the trumpets and the swords and the gleaming glitter, the armor just all red and the big plumes and boom, 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 coming in on the other side. Very contrasting images there. So that's why they were both there. I mean, that's why.
Plus, he was saying that everyone's saying he's king of the Jews, and Herod's like, oh wait, I'm the king.
Well, he's the king. Yeah. He's the emperor. God, in the Old Testament, God tells us that he really doesn't want you to have kings on earth, emperors on earth, and he allows it though. After many years of beckoning by the Jewish people, we want a king. We want a king. Everybody else has a king. We want a king. He gives them a king. What happens? The king goes corrupt, and just everything falls apart. And I told you so.
Go figure.
If we can screw it up, we will.
Mm-hmm.
We're human, and God knows that. He created us that way. If he hadn't, what would we be? If he hadn't given us this free will and this opportunity, we'd be what? Drones.
It'd be boring.
Well, it'd be because he still wants us to worship him, so he just have to. You don't have free will, but you got to worship me. Okay, well we have to worship him. That's not what he wants. He wants to be loved, just like we do. We're created in his image. He wants to be loved. He wants to have people like him for who he is. Right? He may have a little self-esteem issue sometimes when people turn their back on him, right?
We were made in his image.
We were made in his image. Absolutely.
Some of that stuff's got to come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. We wouldn't need souls if we didn't have the free, free will. I don't think.
No. Why?
I mean, if you're a drone, why do you need a soul if you're a drone? I mean, if you're.
Well, what happens when you die? You still have consciousness. You still are conscious of you as a being.
Well, we honestly don't know what we would be without free will. There's no way to know.
You're talking about speculation now. I'm happy we're not.
I'm
happy God gave us free will.
We'd all be like Alexa or something.
Something like that.
I'm sorry, I don't know that one.
Something like that. Something like that. So
we probably would have never been born, really.
Possibly.
There wouldn't have been room on Earth if no one ever died and if no sin was ever committed.
If we keep creating each other, we'd use up the resources here pretty quick. I mean, the planet's already overcrowded now, and that's with 1 million people a day dying.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine none dying.
Would Adam and Eve themselves really have ever procreated if sin was never entered in the world? Because what would be the need of...
Oh, I think they would have.
It would be like bacteria or something.
Still, what would have been the need of if there's a man and a woman, God's children to live forever? Then
because they weren't going to live forever. They never said that. They never said that.
No, God was going to have them live forever whenever He created them.
I think God. I don't think it's very clear as to what they said about. But
really,
he created them to grow, to have have us grow as a people.
To go forth and multiply.
Go forth and multiply.
Because the purpose of that story is to show that we still sinned, even though we were still in that perfection.
We were in heaven. We were in paradise.
It's a science experiment. It's like, what if they're going to eat off this tree if they can't eat it?
The thing is, you were talking about God being all-knowing, omnipotent, and omniscient. all-powerful, all-knowing. He knew. You know, he created. He knew what was going to happen.
He didn't make that mistake.
Well, he knew that that mistake had to happen for things to go the way he wanted them to go, and that's just what he does. You know, and that's why I think a lot of times when we have things that happen to us that are bad, there's a reason for it. You know, death seems like a horrible thing here, but it talks about in the sermon today about the abyss, looking into the abyss, which like Jesus did when he was up. You know, the imagery was that he's hung between heaven and the earth somewhere.
I did like that imagery. That was a great way to.
And he's looking up into the abyss, and all he can see is the swirling clouds of the storm, right? Well, we do that a lot when we lose somebody to death, or relationships break up, or lose our job, anything. We look into that abyss, and what it's telling you is God is right there in that abyss waiting for you. The reason is not necessarily going to be given to you. Why? Today. It's not going to be. But understand this, that God's on the other side of that abyss. He's there waiting for you to come through it. He's waiting for you to deal with that issue. Because
He's in a helicopter with the rope ladder.
That's right. There's a reason we have to go through it. Why? I don't know. Why? I mean, they say like this young man, Guy Delaney, who passed away Thursday night. Let me tell you something. It was horrific the way he died.
I think I remember seeing a little bit of that crash. There was a bunch of cars and all sorts of stuff on there.
A Mercedes-Benz was driving up the tollway, and there's construction on the tollway right now. So it's already a pretty treacherous road. There's no way to room. It's a few lanes, and there's no median. There's nothing. Well, it goes down to 40 miles per hour there at Walnut Hill because it goes down to basically one lane. Well, he kept going 70, and he hit 5 cars.
Wow.
And one of the cars was Guy's. And when he hit Guy's car burst into flames. I pray that he didn't suffer. I pray that he wasn't awake. But why would God allow that to happen?
But I don't know if I've ever told you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, I've always thought, and I will always think. I will always think till the day that God takes through before you go through that. I mean,
well,
I just think that he does.
I don't know. There's people that are tortured all the time that live through torture.
Well, I'm saying maybe that they may still be emoting, they may still be saying something, but they're not there anymore.
I don't know about that, Jim.
I've always felt
I think that's a great way to think about it, but I don't think that's always true because people go through some horrendous torture in their lives and survive them and come out on the other end.
Yeah,
because it makes them what they're going to be.
There's a reason God does things.
Well, think about all the mind
God's
collapse.
not doing it though. God's not.
There's a reason God allows things to happen. Because God has to. We talk about that balance, right? The yin and the yang of the universe, that balance of everything in the universe, it's always got to be balanced. The good and the bad, If you're going to have love in the world, you're going to have hate in the world. You got to. You cannot appreciate love without understanding fully what hate is. Right? You cannot appreciate joy without fully understanding suffering is. Now, most of the time our emotions are down here, down this part of the pendulum, just kind of normal. Right? But when you've got these extreme emotions, this love and hate, it hurts either way. Because the absence of this hurts. Which is the absence of this means that this is there, right? Without this, you've got this usually, if you can find it. But like I say, it's not always, that's why we don't live in these emotions up here this high, because we'd go crazy if it was this intense all the time. That balance of the world has to happen. That's the way he created the world. That's the way he created the universe. And it always will. The universe will always make it right. And I believe you can call that karma as well. And we've called that before, I said it before. Karma is just the equalization of right and wrong in the universe.
Like that movie, Father Figures.
Yeah. So, where do we go from here? What do we take from this? What do we learn from this today? What does it teach us? On the question I put on the front of the cover, which was why? Why did Guy have to die that way? Why did his parents have to suffer? Why did the people, his fellow students at Jesuit are in mourning now and are in pain over the loss of him? Why do we have to all go through that?
Well, for one, like I said, it's the balance.
It is.
But then at the same time, it could have been there's some community that needed to be brought together within this despair
Possibly.
for some reason.
We'll never know for sure.
No.
God
Oh, I say never. I hope someday that maybe after our death.
Sure.
Back when I was in grade school at St. Monica, the nuns there taught us that all these questions you have. This was the way of getting to shut up more than anything. But all these questions you have will be answered on the day of your death when you enter the gates, the pearly gates of heaven.
Thanks, lady.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you can just be patient.
Right. Just wait. Just wait. And that's stuck with me for the rest of my life, as you can see. I mean, I would still think about that when I have these questions. I think, the day that I die, maybe I'll be enlightened. Because our brains, even though we only use about 20%, maybe a little more of our brain. You said that study is wrong, but it's still, I still think we have a lot of our brain we don't use. Okay. Our brains cannot possibly hold the knowledge of the universe, and it's just impossible. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So that's one of the reasons we aren't given answers, I think. There are mysteries in this world. There are mysteries about our lives. There are mysteries about our faith. They're meant to be there. And if we can accept those things as God's will,
That's what makes
our
it faith.
faith becomes much stronger. He intended for us to question things. He built us that way. He wants us to question. But on some things you have to just have faith. That's tough. It's tough. You think about guys, parents right now. What kind of faith? How strong? How could they just accept it? They will. They're good Christian people. They will. They'll understand at some point, hopefully, and hopefully get some comfort out of it. Death is tough. I think it hits me hard when a young fellow like that dies. As you know, I lost my best friend at age 11. We were like brothers. Lived right next door to each other. And I see it, anytime I see something like that, a death, it's senseless, stupid.
Maybe he was depressed or something.
He was perfect. He was a great student. He was fine, as far as everybody knows. Even if he was, people that go on depressed in this world all the time. He was a very good student at Jesuit. He had a promising future. He was an athlete, the whole 9 yards.
Maybe he's like.
Well, you and I have been depressed.
Maybe
I've been depressed by my soul
life. Super miserable. The point is that he's in a better place now.
You don't believe that God was with him even while...
I do. Oh, no, I do. I do believe that.
Because I've been wanting to say this, I just kind of have held off for a second.
Come on.
But you keep saying why did it have to happen, or why have to? Nothing has to, but
You're right.
Does happen. It does.
You're right. It did happen. Why did it happen? I think it's more the better way to put it. And like I said, we don't know.
We don't know, but I do believe that God didn't leave that guy. What was his name?
Guy. I believe absolutely, 100%. That God is always at your side. You've seen the poem about footprints in the sand, right? When he talks about, in my hardest time, you left me. It's just one set of footprints in the sand, because the other times we're together, two sets of footprints. And God looks down and said, no, I didn't leave you. Those are the times that I carried you. Right? The footprints were God's. He never left. He was carrying you. God never leaves us. God is always by your side. You are never alone. It's kind of scary to think sometimes, isn't it? You're never alone. You're never alone.
Tell me about it.
You're never alone.
But the parallels between the two, your friend and the guy Delaney, that must really hit hard for you then, or kind of get close to.
It did. Like I say, it does. It does. It's at 11 years old, death is not something you understand until I was forced to. And it was, those are some times I'll never forget. And I wish, that's when you first learn of, I wish I could have said something, done something differently. That's not necessary. Those people, if you love them and they love you, they know that. They know that. You need to be at peace at that. But it's to watch what's left behind, the mayhem. Often people pull together at times of death, but usually death is very
Destructive.
rough. It's bumpy. And it can be actually downright just ridiculously, insanely hateful. People get greedy, and people get, I want this and I want that, and they said he wanted this done in his ashes, and he wants this and that, and it's not what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be celebrating that person moving on into the next life. They're the happy ones. I mean, obviously, we're the ones that are hurting. Without hurt, without the pain, well, you don't get the love, you don't get the joy, you don't get the good feelings. That equal balance of the two, we often forget when we're up here in the love section up here, the happiness and the joy and woo 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 woo, feeling so good, all those endorphins running through our bodies. We forget that blessing, what that is, and that God gave that to us. But I tell you what, we get over here, God, why did you do this to me? We don't say that over here. Being grateful for what we have, including those feelings of hate, and we have to be grateful because without those we wouldn't have these. Christ dying on the cross and returning in his resurrection. He talked about turning the world upside down, right? Our natural understanding of what is good or evil, right or wrong, wise or foolish, strong or weak, has been turned upside down in Jesus Christ, the crucified. The insignificant and humble ways of faith, hope, and love are shown to him to be God's way. The dark world around us continues to mock the foolish hope, but our assurance is that the outcome of faith in Jesus as God is nothing short of true rescue on the other side of death. What did I say? What did I just say?
Well, just like how Jesus had basically asked God, how could you forsake me? How everyone was mocking him for how could he not come down? At the very end of it, he proved that he had come down after those 3 days.
He proved he wasn't so stupid after all, right? He wasn't much of a fool after all. He fulfilled the prophecy. He did what he was supposed to do.
He proved it to himself.
Well, yeah,
I believe that God saves us also before death. Like, it's not after death that when we're saved. Like, God gives us the salvation throughout our whole life.
Well, I agree with that. But it's talking about that time going.
I know, like
there.
that's the whole point of Christians, and after we die, is like for God to save us from our sins and
right.
like to
bring
us
saved.
into heaven.
No. We're saved. Where's the tissues?
Get back here. Why to give me?
We're saved.
I know you're gonna get me through this.
We're saved through our faith, through our baptism into Christianity.
It's we don't find out until we're dead. That's the thing.
That's part of the faith is
not knowing until the end.
Right, because we don't know. Have you seen it? Have you seen what's on the other side of this world, on the other side of this life? Many people say they have, and I don't have any reason to doubt them. Maybe they have. But we don't even know that exists. We don't know that exists. I can't tell you for sure. I've been there. I know. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. It exists. I know it exists because of my faith. I know it exists because of my ability, unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to put it, to have contact with some of my loved ones who have gone on. I know because it doesn't make sense for it not to be. And I know because God tells me. It's that simple. I don't need the book to really tell me anything. God tells me and shows me every day. Not necessarily why of everything, but that he's there. And no matter what, whether you get the answers or not that you want, you're going to be taken care of. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it. Not this body. This is just dust. Not this. But you, inside you. That soul, that thing we don't understand so much. It's so funny. It's just ironic. That's who we are. That's what we are, is that soul. This body's nothing. It's just ashes, just dust. And here's this thing that's the really us, the true us is in here, and we don't even really understand what it is. It's amazing to me.
It's because it just is.
It just is. It just is. The soul does go on, though. The soul does go on, and so do all the wonderful emotions, that love and compassion, and they go with it. Love never dies. True love never dies. It's always around. Which I guess means true hate never dies either. It's always around.
Equal universe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you gotta care about something to hate it.
A good point.
That's right.
Really good point.
So what else you got for me? Anything today?
Mm-mm.
So we're not going to get the answers why, I guess, huh?
Well, you keep giving us the answer. Really, it's the balance.
Remember when you were
It
kids,
is.
you'd just be like, because.
Just because. I said so. Right?
Because God
For
said
God's
so.
sake, I said so.
Why? Because. Why?
Because. Right.
Because. Because why? Because.
You asked me why one more time. All right, guys. Okay, don't forget, if you have not signed up for the potluck, please go online and do that. We really want you to be here. It's going to be a good one. And I'll tell you what, Easter's going to be fun. And y'all got to see my posters for Holy Week.
Oh my God, they
Let me
look
tell you
so
something.
good.
Posters alone are worth coming for.
Yep.
So, all right, next Sunday, 3 o'clock. It's the last Sunday before Holy Week.
Yep.
So come on in. Let's talk about it next week. Next week is a good one too.
I haven't looked at it yet, so.
It's a good one. This has been a good series of sermons. I've
It
liked
really has.
what we've done
I know.
here.
I've been surprised by it.
So we'll keep going with that, and then we have the big Easter celebration coming up after the Holy Week, and as we call it, Hell Week. But Holy Week.
Yeah, I'm gonna start trying to tackle some of that stuff early
I'm
this
gonna
week.
start, yeah, we gotta start working on that. Anyway, 3 o'clock next Sunday, guys. I appreciate y'all being here. If you haven't signed in, make sure you do sign in before you leave. That's it. Have a good week. I'll see you next Sunday.
Yeah.
3 o'clock.